Hey, what's up guys? Ravenclaw here and welcome back to the Ravenclaw channel, and today we are talking about macros. You guys have asked me what macros do I use and how to make a macro and things like that. So I thought I'd put together a video on going through just the basics of making a macro, and then we'll dip into some advanced topics and help you guys on the way to making those better macros to keep your bars nice and clean. If you have any questions or something that I didn't cover, or you want a specific macro made, come over to the Discord channel, even the Facebook page, and hit me up and we can go through some stuff there. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so the way I want to do this is just explain briefly about what a macro is and why to use them and little things like that. And then we'll go over my macros, the ones that I actually use, and as we go through them, I'll discuss the different aspects of a macro and how in-depth you can actually get with them. I don't want to go too crazy with this because this is, like I said, it's a major topic on its own, and you can do absolutely anything. Like, for example, you can pretty much do anything an add-on does within a macro. The only difference really is, one, you have to click the macro, but two, there's only a certain amount of character space that you can use inside a macro. But anyway, so first things first, what is a macro? So for those of you that don't know, a macro is simply just a line of commands in one button, I guess. So as we see down here, we've got different buttons that we use to cast our spells and that, and a macro allows us to do multiple actions with one action, I guess. So you might have already seen things like /say, you know, and it changed the command there. You can do things like I don't know, we can say, you can even cast abilities, for example, like if we turn around and we select this guy, we can go cast Cobra Shot. There you go. Okay, so that's what the macros are essentially. They're using different commands in succession to complete a task. All right, so if you hit /M, we'll open up our macro creation panel, whatever you want to call it, and we'll go ahead and we'll make a new one. Now, the basics of macros are, first we can name them. We'll call it tutorial. Okay. Now, as you can see in my macros here, we've got show tooltip. Show tooltip is exactly what it says. So if we go show tooltip, it will show the tooltip of any spell that we have here. As you can see, as we hover over them, you can see the tooltip over there. This is handy, especially if you've got different abilities coming up on the same macro. So if one's a healing spell, one's a defensive spell, or an offensive spell, you want to be able to see what they are, and this will also show you the cooldown of that particular spell that's being used. Now, in order for a macro to work, there's a few things you must understand. Okay, so one, punctuation, capitalization, all of this, also known as syntax, must be adhered to. So if you don't spell something exactly right, for example, like here we've got Cobra Shot. See how it's capitalized? You must spell it exactly the way that the developers have spelt it. Otherwise, the game will have no idea what you're doing and your macros will not work. And the amount of times I've had people say, my macro is not working, why isn't it? I have a look at it and it's literally you missed a capital letter. And in all the years I've been programming, I've missed semicolons or commas and things like that, and has driven me nuts trying to find these things. But okay. So the next thing is macros work in a certain order. So they'll go obviously from top to bottom, in left to right. Now what I mean by this is, let's have a look at my barb shot, for example. Okay, so this we can get into because this is now basic, right? So we can have a look at the 4 main offensive macros that I have here. First one being barb shot. Now these are all the same, so you just have to change the name of the ability you want to cast. But how it works is, it'll read it from top, so it's obviously going to show the tooltip. Then the next one here, we've got pet attack. Now in the description, I'm going to have a list of all of the different commands, the conditions and everything like that. But I do encourage you guys to come over to the Discord channel and we can work on these together if you so choose. And I might even actually hold live tutorials and stuff in there as well. So as you can see, pet attack. Now what this is saying is we want our actual pets to attack anything that I'm attacking. Now the reason I'm doing this is because, especially if, like, let's say we've got a bunch of ads here and we're cleaving them down, but my pet's over here, right? And even if, like, if your pets are over here and you're hitting Cobra Shot or multi-shot, they won't necessarily run over and cleave down the major part of the ads that we want. So having this on all of my offensive abilities forces them to go exactly where I want them. Next line says, all right, cast the ability that I want. So obviously you can see Cobra Shot, Barb Shot, multi-shot, and everything like that. And then underneath that, I'm actually casting the pet's basic attack. And the pure reason for this is I've noticed that the pets don't actually always use their basic attack on cooldown, so this is just forcing it to happen. Okay, and when we look at this, you might think, okay, well, how is this all working? It'll, like I said, when you press the button, it'll actually read it from top to bottom. So the first action, it'll go, yep, okay, pet attack, then barb shot, then it'll find whichever one this, so for example, had to use his claw, and then it'll go like that, and then it'll finish. Okay, now, having said this, if you have, let's say we've got, okay, these two here. We've got Aspect of the Wild and Bestial Wrath. Now, you might have heard of things like burst macros and all this other stuff. Unfortunately, due to the global cooldown change, lots of the old burst macros have changed. Like Bestial Wrath, and these were never on the same cooldown. You can just pop them together and you could do some damage. Now they are separate. So if we have something that has a cooldown, a global cooldown, if you have them in succession here and you press the button once, it'll shoot off the first one. Like, let's say we've got Bestial Wrath and Aspect of the Wild here. Because there's a global cooldown, if you hit it once, it'll go, yep, shoot off Bestial Wrath, but it won't be able to do the next one because it's on a cooldown. Then you have to actually hit the button again. Okay, so we won't get too crazy caught up in that. I just wanted to explain that real quick. Okay, so those are my offensive macros. Now, we're going into the next one, which will lead into my flare, my traps. Okay, and this one now has a condition. So to expand on what we've already spoken about, I just want to apologize to you if you hear cars in the background. Today's just been the worst day for recording. I've been trying to record all morning and it's just been a nightmare. So I do apologize. Okay, so as we're looking here, the first part of your macro, so we've got show tool, we've already explained that. The next one is we've got cast. Now you can do things like /use, /equip, things like that. So this is the command. All right, so the command to the game, not the command of the ability. All right, now we have what's known as conditions. Without getting too far, so if you aren't from a programming background, a condition literally means, like we would in real life, make a decision. And that decision must return true. Okay? So for example, like things like if statements, meaning if we want to use this, or do we want to use this? If this is on cooldown, we will use this. That's the basis of that. So what this has to happen is when you have your conditions within square brackets, by the way, this must return true in order for you to use the ability. So these are parameters. So for example here, what we've got is we've got cast flare at cursor. Now you can have at player, at target, at pet. Like I said, all of these are going to be in the description. But what we've got here is when I cast flare, no matter where my cursor is on the screen, it'll cast it at that. So if we put it right here, the flare gets cast there. Okay. Now with conditions, once again, they get read from left to right. You can have multiple conditions, and inside those conditions, you can have multiple what I call sub conditions or whatever you want to call it. But once again, it goes from left to right. So if we look at our freezing trap, or both traps, they're the same. Okay. You can see I've got multiple conditions here. Now, let's have a look at how that works. So within this first condition, we're saying shoot it. We want to shoot our trap at the player. Player means you, okay? Target, obviously target, at focus, you get the idea. But we've got two sub-conditions here. So these must return true. And just so you are aware, conditions, so we've got two conditions here. They will run, it'll trigger on the first true condition. Okay, so if we've got about 3 different conditions here and we really want the third one to fire off, but we've put them in the wrong order and the first one always returns true, it'll always happen like that. So just place them in a way that you need to use them. For example, here, so when I hold shift, so here's what we call a modifier. there are tons of different modifiers, and in this instance we're using keyboard modifiers. You can use Shift, Control, and Alt, and you can also do Shift, Alt, Shift, Control, and so on and so forth. But here, what we've got is at the player, that's one condition, so that's me. I'm obviously true, it can't be not true. And then we're going to hold Shift. So if the game sees that I'm holding Shift when I click on my macro, it will drop the trap at my feet. So as you can see, holding Shift, it'll drop it at my feet. Now, if I don't hold Shift, so it'll go, okay, the player is true, but this is false, so therefore it'll return false. It'll jump to the next one. Okay, is there a cursor? Yes. So, all right, I'm going to shoot it at the cursor. So this replicates the old trap launcher that we used to have. And I've got that true for both my my tar trap and my freezing trap. Okay, so that's a little bit of deeper explanation on how to do that. So as you can see now, if I put my cursor over there, it'll throw it at the cursor. Okay, so now I want to show you one that uses a different type of condition, and it's also what you could call a modifier again. And this one here, I use this for my purges. Now I have a bat and I have Hattie. Hattie has Spirit Shock, and the bat that I use has Sonic Blast. If you want to know why I'm using these pets, I have other videos in my guides that will tell you why. So the first part of my BM Hunter guide will tell you why I'm using these. Now here's the thing. You can make a macro that just goes cast Sonic Blast, cast Spirit Shock. But what I've found is when you have that certain pet out, it'll only, I don't know why, this is just a bug with the game, I don't know what it is, but it won't actually change the photo. And I'll explain that in a sec. So what I've done here is added conditions to say, first check if the bat's out, then load this onto my screen, or show the tooltip for this so I can get the cooldown and everything. And same again, if that's returned false, which I've got Hattie, it'll come up, it'll show me Spirit Shock. Okay, now, brief overview on how this works. So let's go back to the macro we're making. So for example, if we wanted to cast, let's say, Feign Death, for example. So what we're going to do is we're going to do mod shift. I just want to show you that you can, instead of having them how I've set them out here, with different pets, wherever it is, different pets, you can actually just do something like this. So if we go mod shift, I'm only doing this because we can then see the two different abilities. What have we got? FEIGN. That's right. Whoops. I still haven't had my coffee, so this is going to be wonderful. Now, what I'm getting at here is when you want to end a certain sequence or a certain ability and you want to do something else as well, you need to separate them with what is known as a semicolon. Okay? This will then say to the program, let's call it the game, whatever. It'll say this is one condition. If that's not met, you can then move on to the next thing. So what I normally do is if I want to do a quick macro, I can do it like this, and then if I'm not holding shift, let's say shoot Cobra Shot. So let's put this down in our bar. Alright, now what I'm showing you here is this is what I call a dynamic loading macro. With show tooltip here, you can put in the name of the ability you want, but then that becomes static. And what I mean by static, it'll only ever show you the tooltip for that ability that you've put here. If we're doing a dynamically loading macro, like we have two abilities here, we want to make sure that the first one's shown or the second one is shown. So if you look down here, Cobra Shot is always shown right here. And that's because the program is found that shift isn't being used. Now if I hold shift, you can see that it changes and it shows me the right name. Now, let's get a little bit more in depth with this. So this is my Spirit Mend macro. This has different conditions like we've already noticed. And what I like to use with this one is the first one is saying, okay, if you're holding shift and it will check is the pet dead or not, then it will check who the focus is. So when I say pet or person or whatever, it's saying, are they alive? And then, is the pet there? Okay. If that is the case and they all return true, this will fire off first. Now, if I'm not holding shift, I want to be able to shoot it on, like, you know, to be able to send Spirit Mend on the target that I've got highlighted under my mouse. So at mouse over, it literally says, so if I've got this guy highlighted, and then I use my, oh my god, I keep forgetting I'm at my garrison. A 2 million heal. Wow. But anyway, so it didn't put it on the pet. It shot it over here. Now, if I don't have if I'm not holding shift or anything, and I'm not have my mouse on anything that I can heal, it is literally going to send it to me. So let me show you this real quick when it comes off cooldown. I'll highlight the target dummy, so the enemy, so I can't send them a heal, and I'm not holding shift. So there you go, my pet will heal me. Now, the reason why I do this is in like visions or dungeons or raids and stuff like that. I want to be able to give myself a quick heal and keep myself alive. Or if I've got a teammate, or you want to put that last tiny little bit of heal onto the tank or whatever like that, you can highlight them in your frames and then send them the heal. I don't know, I do that with my Royal Sacrifice and everything like that as well. So you can utilize these macros and change the ability to suit you. Okay, here we go again. So what I've got here, I've got three different conditions once more. First one, as we've just had a look, is mouse over. Now we've got another condition here. So this one is saying harm. Now I've made some pretty cool macros back in the day, especially for healers. So if you've got a healer and you want to be able to minimize the amount of bars and actions that you have here, you can actually do something cool, and I'll show you that in a sec. But what we're doing here is harm and help. So what this says is, on the mouse over, if I've got my mouse on this guy here, right, and I go to stun, it won't work because it's not an enemy, so I can't harm that person. So that's right. And obviously, are they alive? So if I were to do that and hit this guy here, watch what happens. There's nothing to attack because I can't harm this person. Now, the same goes with this. Focus. If we've made this person a focus and the focus exists, in other words, I actually have a focus and they aren't dead, then shoot that off. And the last one is blank. So I chuck this one in because this will default to standard. So it'll go to my target in essence. Okay, so for example, let's just show you, we'll attack this guy, but we'll also make him our focus. Okay, so now we've got a focus, but we're on, say, this person here. Okay, but I won't highlight it. Now, if I hold, where are we? If I use intimidation, you can see that, and this proves to you that I've got a target here, right? But this one actually would return true first. So be careful in the way that you load these. So that was a good example on the precedence that it takes as they go through. Now what we've got, I've also got, so my misdirection works very much like the spirit mend as well. One, I put misdirection on my pet, and that's if I hold shift. That is so in like visions and that I can get my pet to tank everything and I don't have to worry about it. We've got mouse over, and once again it says help. So if I can actually heal or a target is friendly, I can put that on that. So that way I've got the ability to put it on the tank, or I can put it on my pet with just a mouse over or whatever. And then finally we've got focus. So I usually, when I go into mythics, and I'll focus the tank, and that way I can quickly just chuck misdirection onto the tank as we're making pulls. So that's pretty straightforward. Then what we have finally is our aspect of the turtle. So this is another one. Now we've got cancel aura. So what this allows me to do, okay, is when I press this macro, I can, let's say I only really want turtle to stop an attack coming in and killing me, and then I want to get out of it because I don't want to sit there and lose DPS. So this guy's about to shoot me. It allows me to put turtle up, and then when I press it again, I can take it off. Okay, and I use that in arenas and stuff as well. But cancel aura doesn't have to be aspect of the turtle. What cancel aura is looking at is up here. These are also known as like buffs, but also known as auras. Okay, so if you can cancel it by right-clicking it, it'll also be able to be cancelled like this. And then it says cast aspect of the turtle. The thing is here that if you spam this, you can get yourself in a bit of trouble. So be careful how you use this one. Yeah, there are other things like, let's say you wanted to be able to cast a bunch of spells in one go, but you wanted to do it in order. So then you would do cast sequence. Now cast sequence allows you to, let's just open up a thing and then do a bunch of different, where are we? We've got cobra shot. Oops, sorry, cobra shot. Then we do that. Then we'll go barb shot, just as an example. Okay, we'll change that one there, and we'll do this. So what this does is now allows you to use the different spells as we go, and as you can see, it's looping through in order of cast sequence. Okay, all right. So let's go back. Now there are other things. Got so much going on now. Jeez. You can do things like you can reset the order. So it'll work based on when it gets to the last ability or item or spell or whatever you want to call it. And then it will jump back to the beginning. Okay, these are pretty good, and like I wouldn't use these if you're having trouble with your rotation, because macros won't automate the game for you. They just will not do that. Okay, but they can help you in certain situations. So this cast sequence macro is pretty good. Now you can do reset. I'm pretty sure it's equals 10. I haven't used one of these in a while. So what that says is if we do that and we wait 10 seconds. So as you can see, that's another thing too. See how my pets haven't attacked and I've used cobra shot? That's another point I was making earlier. But as you can see here, now we've gone back to the first one after 10 seconds. So yeah, now I can get so in depth with this, it's just ridiculous, but I thought I would go over my macros to help you guys out so you can use my macros, or you get an understanding on how these work. I will be more than happy to do another video on this that goes through absolutely everything and get ridiculously OP with these things, but this was sort of just to give you an understanding on how to make macros and why I've done what I've done. One last thing I wanted to show you, I did mention earlier about the help or harm. So if we make a quick macro, something like this, let's use this one. Okay, let's say for example, we want to cast, so we're using help here. So the condition is if I've highlighted a friend, I want to be able to cast, say, Spirit Mend. Now we put a semicolon, and then we go harm. We'll say cobra shot. Cobra shot. Okay, now we save. Now, here's the cool thing. Let's change that out. As you can see, when I touch a friend, I've got, when I touch a friend, oh my god, that sounded weird. When I highlight a friendly player, you can see that it changes, but then when I target an enemy, you can see that it changes again. Now, this is another dynamic loading macro that I like. These are great for healers. Now, you can have your damaging spells here, especially if you're in an arena, you're like a druid, you want to moonfire a totem or something like that. You can just quickly select the totem, bam, and then select your arena partner and that, and it will just change back to the spell that you've got there. This allows you to minimize how many buttons you've got going on here and keeps things nice and tidy. You can do things like even further, saying help if target of target is this and that, and you can have then just do a defensive ability. If I hold shift and alt, I want to be able to, on the same button here, if I hold shift, then I want it to be a defensive, like what is it, Ironbark or Barkskin, Ironbark I think it is. You get the idea where I'm coming from. These macros can be just ridiculously OP. But it just depends on how you want to go about it. I wouldn't say go making macros for absolutely everything you do. Try and keep it simple, and try and keep everything understandable. So I basically wanted to make this video to show you a little bit of a deeper understanding, also give you my macros as I mentioned earlier. This will be in the description. Everything will be in the description. And one last thing I want to show you is a website that will allow you to put any macro, put all the macros I've made into this, and it will actually tell you what this macro is doing. And the link to the website will be down in the description. but it's an amazing thing, especially for you guys that don't understand. If you find a macro online, or one of your favorite WoW players, which obviously should be me, but but if they've got a macro they've shown you, you don't really understand how it works, you can chuck it into this thing and it will show you. It'll explain exactly what it does. Not like A, B, C, D, but it will give you a better understanding on how it works. But guys, this was like I said, whoa, what was that? Guy's getting smacked. Oh, anyway, but like I said, this was just my quick sort of overview on a deeper understanding of macros. If you need more help, or you want something very specific and you're having trouble making it, like I said, come to the Discord channel, let me know. We'll make I'll probably do a live stream and we'll do some live macro creations and that. And the next video, we're going to go over weak auras and how to get crazy with weak auras and pretty much do whatever you want with weak auras. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed and hope you got something out of this. And as always, you amazing people out there, 1, thank you for the support, and 2, keep on sniping. Take care.